Okay, hello again, everyone. My name is Burak Sayın. I'm the founder of Spacetime Works. It's a research and development firm based in Malmö, Sweden, working with placemaking and culture. And so today we are here for the first webinar of School of Advocacy, co-organized by Culture Action Europe, Spacetime Work, and CKI. We will get to that in a second, but just a very brief background information. So the story and the background of this webinar started more than 2 years ago. Within the framework of Culture Action Europe, as you know, Culture Action Europe is a network of cultural operators, policymakers, researchers, basically advocating for culture to be in every policy aspect of European life. And so we started the organization of regional hubs within our European field, and afterwards, of course, we started to meet individually, and we have organized quite a few meetings. After that, we have decided that we would like to form a bit more structured dialogue among us in the Nordic countries as cultural operators. So we applied for co-funding from Nordic Council of Ministers, which they were really nice, and decided to support us in our mission to strengthen Nordic voice in the European conversations about cultural sector. So since then, we have been organizing more meetings, and this has overlapped with the publication of Cultural Compass by the European Commission. But of course, before that, Culture Action Europe did quite a bit of work on the Cultural Compass in terms of sector blueprint document and so on. And so we have decided this is a really good moment to talk about one of the chapters within the within Cultural Compass, that is the artistic freedom. So here we are today and gonna talk about this topic. And now I'm just gonna give the mic to Nils Righold, who is the moderator and who is gonna take us through the hour and longer. Thank you so much.
Now I'm unmuted. Hello, everybody. So good to see you all. So good to be here. Thank you very much for the fly-in, Burak. I think it's fair to say that issues of freedom, the right to stand up for a transparent and liberal democracy, the place of arts and culture within the framework of democracy, has probably never been this articulated and this necessary to reflect on and debate over the last 30, 40, maybe even that longer, 40 years. The positions that we see both in Europe, within the European Union, but also obviously for geopolitical reasons across the world at the moment, puts pressure on artistic freedom. We take artistic freedom for given in some parts of Europe, but even here in the Nordics, for instance, we see that different patterns or new patterns in terms of how arts and culture is being supported is basically also undermining the right to be, so to speak, in opposition to the norm or in opposition to different kinds of narratives that run through society. So it's time to really reflect about the position of arts and culture in society, the societal contract. You can say, what is the societal contract of arts and culture? What's the societal contract from the side of society in terms of the artists, and not least in terms of artistic freedom? With me today, I'm so lucky that I have a whole series of fantastic speakers that can help us kind of dive into the topic and navigate where we are and what we are doing and how we are doing it and why we are doing it and what we are not doing, what we should be doing, what is needed, and probably also something about why aren't we doing what we should be doing? What are the dilemmas that keeps us from doing what we should be doing. Our first presenter with me, we have Natalie Giorazze, we have Manon Moulin, we have Rosa Meriläinen, and we have Janne Schäfer. I will introduce each of the speakers a bit more when we get to it. I would say the first out, the row in which we will allow our fantastic panel to unfold their reflections on what we're doing follows in a way it's a kind of track. We're trying to understand what's the landscape that we are talking into. So Natalie will be out first. Then we will try to look into the text, the formation of the text and the reasons behind the text in the blueprint, and therefore Manon will be our second speaker. There has been a publication released in Finland that addresses some of the same issues, but from a very specific Nordic perspective and anchored within the Nordic model. So Rosa will be out third, and then the fourth speaker will be Janne, the artist in the room, that will be the artistic commentator and the artistic, you could call it the artistic view on where are we at the moment. We would also very, very much like you to contribute and participate in the following dialogue. So please, you are more than welcome to raise your hand. You can do that in the bottom of the screen. You can see that there is a boat where you can underreact. You can activate the hands up, and we will give you the word in the order that you raise your hand. You're also welcome, if you don't want to speak out loud, you can send your questions in the chat, and we will read the questions aloud afterwards. So we would very much like your reflections, your comments, and you to be part of these 1.5 hour that we have for us now. Natalie Giorazze, you are you're one of the two Secretary Generals in Culture Action Europe, and you have, both as an organization but also as an individual, I have had the privilege of being in your board at some point. You have had quite a long experience working with, where are we going, what are the issues, what are the dilemmas in policy making, what needs to be addressed, and how can Culture Action Europe, as an umbrella organization and as a reflector and a spokes organization on behalf of culture, stimulate policy making on a European level that basically takes care of some of the key issues, among others, the freedom of speech, the artistic freedom of speech. So, Natalie, can you just unfold the thinking a bit?
Thank you very much, Niels, Burak, everyone, for putting this wonderful conversation together. I'm very much looking forward to the exchange and also to hear, specifically, I'm very interested to hear from Rosa and to see what you have found in your research and even how that relates to some of the findings that we at Culture Action Europe and the Reset Network have been putting together. Thank you, Niels, also for this very warm introduction. Indeed, I am here on behalf of Culture Action Europe, that is one of the major cultural organizations, European cultural networks that works very much at the intersection of practice and policy making and trying to influence European cultural policies that reflect the realities of the cultural sector and also the changing reality of cultural sector as we see all across Europe and in different parts, sometimes in the parts where we would expect it that changes positive or less positive to happen, but also in the parts where we would not have expected. So I'm particularly glad to be in this Nordic conversation because, of course, for decades, everyone has been looking up on the map on the Nordics, but also looking up towards the cultural policies and other social policies that the Nordics have had as a way to go and as a way to achieve where we all want to be, and it's unfortunate also to see that even in the region, in your region, things are changing, and how that influences also the development of the rest of the continent and the world. I have, as we are being, I've been asked really also to contextualize a little bit the process of cultural compass that has been just published by the Commission 1 month ago, and also how we as Culture Action Europe have been contributing to quite a long process of consultation that the European Commission opened. So it may sometimes be a little bit theoretical or heavy information. So I thought maybe to put some of the things on the slides to help you follow my path of the story. But I'm also, please feel free to interrupt me anytime if that becomes too heavy or if there are some clarification questions needed. So let's get that started. Here we go. Okay. So a few words maybe to start with about Culture Action Europe for the ones who do not know us. So as said, we are one of the major European cultural networks. We are celebrating 2025 because we have reached the milestone of 300 members. So that we have never been so big and so diverse. So we are very happy with that growth. Interestingly, Culture Action Europe is a cross-sectorial network, which means that we are representing various cultural sectors, from theatre to dance to visual artists to socially engaged arts practitioners to researchers, policymakers, artists. So that creates really a very vibrant and diverse community that we represent. For us, this is a source of information, this is source of consultation, source of inspiration and mobilization at the European level. So we are very much depending on the work with our members and on the reading of the realities of their members that then fully influences the policy proposals and advocacy actions that Culture Action Europe is putting together. So many of you here are members, so thank you once again for being supporters and being really this source of knowledge and shared knowledge that we have together. So in this context, Culture Action Europe is a political voice of European cultural ecosystem, and we try to work as a connector, as a bridge, from one hand to, as we say, encode what is happening in the cultural sphere, in the cultural practice on the ground, encode that into the policy making at the European level, but also with the partnership and support of our members at the regional and national levels as well. So that, again, the cultural policies that we are developing are the ones that are reflecting to the realities of the sector. On the other hand, we also decode Brussels and European institutions to our members, as quite often it may seem and feel that European Union or European institutions or Brussels, where I am joining you now from, sometimes feels too far away or too difficult or too cold or too grey to understand. So we try to bring some clarity into that, maybe some light and some color, maybe sometimes, into decoding what is happening in Brussels and why actually it matters to the work that our members and our community is doing on the ground. Great. So that's very briefly about Culture Action Europe. This is a metaphor as our image that we have chosen, what you see on the slide, a metaphor of a garden, which is the way how we want to also see our network, a garden that has all these different kinds of plants and shrubs and mushrooms and bushes and trees that are all interconnected with the roots and the system of mycelium. And there are all kinds of different small insects and animals that are also inhabiting in this landscape, and we are all very much interdependent and interconnected. So that is why also this image that we like to represent our network as this flourishing garden. But we are not talking here gardening, but we are talking here about navigation. So, Culture Compass, you may or may not have heard what the document is or what it is all about. So I'll try to give hopefully some clarity to this document. Now, Culture Compass for Europe has been published on the 12th of November this year, 2025, so over 1 month ago, and it's the first strategic document of the European Union that looks into the future of culture at the EU and the development of culture at the EU for the coming years in the last decade almost. So the last similar framework, strategic document that the EU had published dates back to 2018. So in a completely different world as we look from now. So this is the world before pandemic, before war in Ukraine, before AI, before far right rise all across Europe, before we have been probably seeing so much cases of censorship and decreased freedoms. So completely outdated this document was, and was absolutely not working in those new realities that we are facing. Last year in September, the president of the European Commission gave the task, so to speak, to the commissioner Mikalev, who is the commissioner for culture, sports, and intergenerational dialogue, a task to come up with this new strategy for culture in the coming years at the EU level. So this is Culture Compass. It has been a long process of putting this document together from the side of the European institutions. Long process, 1 year. It took 1 year and a little bit more to put this all together. And there has been a number of consultation processes that have been put in place that I may go more into detail about that as well. The first line of consultation that the Commission has opened was in the beginning of this year in March, when the Commission has invited over 30 or 40 European sectorial cultural networks to try to consult and see what the sector wants to see in this document. So what are the priorities that the document should be looking at? So Culture Action Europe, with many of our partners and network members, have participated in this exchange in Brussels, which was the beginning of the consultation process, which was followed then by public consultations, online surveys that the Commission opened, and they have received, I believe, over 300 or so replies on that. So just to show that the cultural sector has been very mobilized and willing to contribute to this consultation process, understanding that this is really a central document for the sector at the European level when it comes to policy, strategy, and political positioning of culture. In parallel of this official process of the Commission, Culture Action Europe decided to take a bit more active role also in shaping the document. So we have launched in parallel our own consultation within our own members in light of creating, if you like, a shadow culture compass, or what we called, a document is called Two Words Culture Compass, Sector's Blueprint. So what we have imagined with this whole process was that if it was us basically drafting Culture Compass, what we would have put into this document. So to do so, we have also launched quite a long process of consultation with our members. So we have mobilized our network members and have created 10 different working groups, and each working group has been working on 10 policy briefs that has been identified as 10 issues that we wanted to be addressed within the culture sector. So those policy briefs are from culture's role in security to working conditions to sustainability to artistic freedom, well-being, etc. So it is really wide-spanning a combination of topics that our members have been working, and we have brought that all together into this blueprint document. I'm very happy that Manon is joining us today, because Manon and the Reset Network have been leading the chapter on artistic freedom. So Manon will tell us more in details what we have put in this chapter. And I hope the QR code works, so you should be able to look at the document directly also on your screens. So maybe just to just to finish probably with the blueprint. So then the blueprint has been presented by us to everyone within the institution. So the commissioner and his cabinet has received it as our proposal, and it was up to them to take what they wanted to take from them, that and what not, to the DG to the DG EAC, the cultural directorate in the commission. And then we waited for the publication of the real compass, and that day came as well. And what we have see in the official compass is something that we believe reflects in a large extent to what we as a sector have been putting together, and what we have been passing over also to the Commission. So it seems that generally we have been heard and listened to and heard, and although maybe some of the aspects of the compass can have been developed better, but in general, we at Culture Action Europe are welcoming the document as it is. And very quickly, I'll try to take you through the main aspects of what we see in Culture Compass and how we read that as well as Culture Action Europe. First of all, I think it's very important to mention that this document is very political and is very ambitious. The framework that we had before in 2018 lacked this level of ambition and the political dimension as what we see in the Culture Compass now. And you see this the quote of the opening of the Culture Compass that really positions here, also in terms of language, positions and bring culture and its political vision dimension at the heart of the development of European Union, but also connects, and this is important, connects the strategy and political vision with an implementation and budgetary part of it, because European Union is now in the process of negotiating its next long-term budget from 28 to 34. So, of course, all those ambitions that are put in strategic document like that, in order them to be achieved, it requires also financial, not only political, but also financial support. So that is also related to the conversations with the MFF, with the multi-annual financial framework, which stands for a long-term budget for culture, for Europe, sorry. Another dimension also how the culture compass is framed is around this concept of Europe for culture and culture for Europe. And that kind of is sort of again the language, but if you dive deep into each part of it, the part on Europe for culture is actually referring to and focuses on really
Ok,
creating
va
the
benissimo. Ti aspettiamo
right.
qui.
Ah, non potevi, certo, no, non potevi passare.
So creating the right conditions for culture to thrive in Europe, and that includes cultural participation, it includes artistic freedom, and it just includes, access and the simple joy of culture. So in a way, Europe for Culture part looks at culture as a sector. So what Europe should be doing in order to support the sector as it is. And then Culture for Europe rather looks into what can culture do to contribute in some of the other non-culture specific, so to speak, priorities of the European Union. And here we are like more looking at the transversal role of culture in terms of the acting as a vector for resilience, for democracy, economic, social, and territorial cohesion, well-being, competitiveness. So all the big topics that are very present in the European conversation. Culture Compass is also structured across 4 chapters. So culture creates, culture works, it empowers and connects. So in part of Culture Create, it really looks into how culture contributes or relates culture to the European values and the cultural rights, which is the first ever reference actually in this kind of documents, the reference to cultural rights. It looks at safeguarding artistic freedom, promoting cultural and linguistic diversity, participation, widening participation and access to culture. So and working conditions of, so Culture Creates is very much looking at this intersection of values and the rights. Culture Works, the second chapter, is looking specifically in creating better working conditions also for the artists and cultural workers. So it looks also on mobility. It looks about also into youth participation, both as audiences, but more importantly in this part as young and emerging artists. It looks at education. So that's all those aspects are covered in the chapter Culture Works. Then we have a third chapter, Culture Empowers, and that is more connecting culture and cultural heritage to be more competitive and resilient. It looks into digital and AI. So this culture and climate, so all those topics are covered under Culture Empowers part, and then Culture Connects, which is the last chapter that looks into international cultural relations, and also calls for an updated strategy, EU strategy when it comes to EU cultural relations, another document that has been long outdated. And then I'm finishing. I hope. Then it also presents 20 flagship initiatives that the Commission will be leading in the coming years. And for the sake of our conversation this afternoon, I will mention only one of those, which is culture. State of culture report that will be a periodical report that the European Commission will be publishing to assess to assess the progress regarding the development of the cultural and creative ecosystem within Europe,
La
with a
macchina
particular focus
le radici
on
bevono.
freedom of artistic expression. So the State of Culture report will really have a big focus on trying to monitor and also to register the cases of the breach of freedom of artistic expression in Europe. The first State of Culture report is expected to be published in the 2027, I think the third quarter of 2027. So we definitely will have our eyes and ears very widely open to see what this report will, how it will look like, and also are there as always as a network to be in conversation in terms of giving visibility and providing content for those kind of actions. So I believe this was a bit what I wanted to share with you in terms of what are those documents we're talking about, and what is the context, and what is the history also of all this. And then I will try to do a soft transition to Manon with one of our assets of our Ask Pay Trust campaign that Culture Action Europe is running. If you are not aware of it, I invite you to check our website and join and support this campaign. And this asset is particularly looking at the chapter of the blueprint on artistic freedom.
Hmm.
It has beautiful voiceover of my colleague Maya and Manon, but I messed up technically, so sorry. It has music and it has a voiceover on that, which probably I'm just realizing that you haven't heard. But anyway, thank you very much, and I think I will end here, and looking forward for the rest and for the conversation that follows.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much, Natalie, and thank you for painting up the backdrop so well. I'll hand over the microphone to you, Manon. Manon is the editorial coordinator of all European projects for the non-profit organizations Artifati, and she specifically works on European network independent cultural and media organizations like the Reset Network. She's also the curator for the media project Sphera and the newsletter We Are Europe. Malone has written, as you just could read, the chapter has contributed to the chapter on artistic freedom. So Manon, please, the screen is yours.
Thank you. I guess that indeed, Natalie, that's the most fluid, yeah, getting from one to another. I've been quoted. That's interesting. No, thank you so much for explaining as well and setting the context. I mean, the European policy context we're in at the moment, that is very loaded indeed. And of course, we with Reset, so this network representing European independent cultural and media organization, we are very much committed into contributing to this very lively policy momentum, maybe we could say. And so we have done, I mean, we do with being a member of Culture Action Europe. And again, thank you to Culture Action Europe for all the very, the dynamic that you just shuffle into the European networks and the European cultural scene with all the commitment towards defending cultural rights. Yeah, with this blueprint, basically we, as Natalie explained, with Reset, we were a part of the first meetings in Brussels that were organized by the Commission to try and give a voice for the independence into the Cultural Compass, and then contributed with the call for evidence that the Commission opened. And of course, when Culture Action Europe suggested that we would coordinate the chapter on artistic freedom within the blueprint, we were more than excited to do so, as artistic freedom is at the heart of what we do, of what we're trying to document mainly. And so maybe, before getting into what we do with Reset and how our participation into the blueprint really makes sense, I really want to keep on this conversation that Natalie started by explaining a bit how we worked for this specific chapter. So yeah, each chapter is basically a policy brief. And so the first one that opens this blueprint is the one on artistic freedom. We were 13 different networks working on this specific chapter. We coordinated it, but it was very, very much of a collective endeavor. And yeah, basically we were given a lot of room for maneuver, freedom by Culture Action Europe to really work in the way that we wanted to. We worked on it over the summer. And so we had several calls with all of this network. As Natalie explained, everything is cross-sectoral, so we all have very different point of view and very different experiences within our own cultural sector. I mean, with Reset, we are cross-sectoral, so it was okay to navigate, but sometimes, coming from maybe a music background or a performing arts background, or what do I know, bookshop background, you may have experiences and priorities that are different. And so we need kind of to navigate these priorities and these perspectives in order for everyone to feel represented and to feel comfortable with defending this policy brief. And so the beginning basically was very much oriented around understanding how we would define artistic freedom, what it means for each of us, because I mean we tend, at least in the policy world, let's say in the policy arena, we are always kind of there are a lot of different notions that can feel very vague and very blurry around us every day. And sometimes we kind of forget about saying, wait, but we are talking about all this, but what does it actually mean for us, and what does it change? So yeah, we started by working on this definition. We took the first step into the UNESCO definition that says, if I may read quickly, Artistic freedom is the freedom to imagine, create, and distribute diverse cultural expressions free of governmental censorship, political interference, or the pressures of non-state actors. It includes the right of all citizens to have access to these works and is essential for the well-being of societies. So that's where we kind of worked from. That's the opening of the chapter, and that's kind of the opening of our work. And then we're like, okay, this is very good. There are some keywords that exist: imagine, create, distribute. But there's also this thing of governmental censorship, political interference, non-state actors. That is very important. But then let's get a bit more real. And so we also try to explain what kind of and attacks and pressures can exist, what kind of instrumentalization can exist, in order to try, without getting too much into specifics, so that we don't exclude any situation, but not staying too broad, in order for everyone to feel like their history and present could be apprehended and just represented by this chapter. So yeah, we had this whole let's say work on context and just setting the scene. And then we got into proposal, because the whole idea was to make policy recommendation with this chapter. And so we have formulated 8 different proposals. 6 of them are really around artistic freedom in general and how it should be included within the EU structure, let's say. And 2 of them are more specific onto online and youth-led initiative. But basically, yeah, the first kind of thing that really came about, I would say, I would maybe focus on 2 proposals that are the one that we were the most attached to, let's say, within the 13 network group. The first one was really getting into the artistic freedom into the rule of law and the rule of law reports of the EU. Because basically the first thing that really comes about is, when you talk about artistic freedom, is that it's mistaken with freedom of expression. I mean, it's not mistaken, is maybe not the right word, but it's just kind of it blurs out within the larger bubble that is freedom of expression, which is true. I mean, it works. Artistic freedom is a kind of freedom of expression, but it's not only it is way more subtle and way more precise. And as today, media freedom, for example, is recognized and is a part of the rule of law report, we do think that artistic freedom, on the same basis as media freedom, should be recognized in it. And if it is, then it would basically involve that the pressure and then the infringement on artistic freedom would be monitored. So that's a first very important step. And we all know that monitoring attempts on freedom is the first step into regulations, basically, because when a high level of pressures or infringements are monitored, then usually it kind of raises awareness that there needs to be a mechanism put in place to counter these infringements. So that's the first kind of proposal that we think is very important. Another one that is major, that really kind of stems from this need to monitor, and that's something that we, with Reset, even before coordinating this chapter in the blueprint, we already formulated, is the fact of establishing a European observatory on artistic freedom. We do think that having an organ, some kind of an institution, independent, of course, to monitor and report violation would be very, very just significant into recognizing that culture is part of the political arena, is part of the political sphere, and that it can be attacked as are all other, just social organization that can be destroyed or targeted, at least. So yeah, that's 2 examples, but I do invite you to read the blueprint and this first chapter to discover the other proposals. I think that Burak put the link into the chat so that you can go have a real read. But yeah, to continue to just explain a little bit how the fact that Reset contributed into coordinating and editing this policy brief makes sense is also just because it is at the origin of our network. Basically, the network was born out of first a French initiative that was organized during lockdown in 2020, when we just realized that independent cultural players lost most of their revenue with lockdown and just not being able to organize events and gather audiences. And so it was already kind of an attack on artistic freedom. Of course, that was put upon us, and that was very positive, but still it just says something about how fragile and how things can just shift from one day to another. And so from this initiative, we went into a European perspective and a European initiative with the Reset Network. And one of the main, let's say, pillar of the main things that Reset does is documenting the situation of independent cultural and media players in Europe, both in terms of their realities, how they live, how they organize themselves, how they work, what are their practices, but also to document the challenges and the threats that they're facing. I mean, nowadays, as Natalie touched on a little bit, the threats are more than ever pressing. And we publish articles once a week at least, and every week this is the same kind of depressing narrative that we see. And I think now we see that artistic freedom, because this is what it is about, is under pressure in a very coordinated way. I mean, the rise of the far right is one, but the rise of every right-wing party that is trying to impose a new narrative upon one that is open and tolerant. We can see that is very coordinated against the cultural sphere that is trying to make this society more open. There's this article that I've read recently on the EU Observer about how the attack around NGOs, and they describe the strategy in a few points that is really interesting. And just thinking about it, I adapted it a little bit to the cultural sector and how it just really plays along. And basically, we can see, like in all countries, and it is the case in the Nordics as well, the first step is really to just target and attack the cultural sector for its position. So you're framing it as some kind of, someone who should stay on the margin. So it's either you're too woke, or either you're too liberal, or either you're too progressive or something, but you're just framed into a bubble that should stay on the margin. So that's kind of the first step. The second step is really to delegitimize and to cut off the budget for culture. And this is kind of the situation that we are hardly into the Nordics right now, with the huge cuts that in Sweden and Finland, for example, that are really pressing. But the example of Slovakia, for example, is really, just telling, with the Slovak Art Council, who just cancelled most funding for cultural centers, or just kind of putting regulation for this funding. And so this lack of funding from the state or from public bodies got into putting cultural players dependent on or philanthropy or the EU. And so then you become very dependent on another source of funding. And we can see right now with the recent EU calls in Creative Europe, which received some I think 1,600 application, which is, it's crazy how many applications. There are people who got 90 score and they didn't get the funding. So everything is becoming very, very dependent. And the fourth step is to then, since they just cannot depend from any other funding than foreign funding, is to criminalize this new source of funding. And we have seen this with the foreign agent law throughout Europe that are popping in Georgia, in Slovakia, in Hungary, in Bosnia and Herzegovina as well. So there's this Russian law that's considered that when you receive foreign funding, you have to declare yourself as a foreign agent. So you get onto a list which limits what you can do. So that's kind of the fourth step. And the fifth step is literally to just eradicate them. And so right there, you have kind of a roadmap onto how to just put artistic freedom into the ground, into its grave, and never exists, basically. And then being able to, from there, to create your whole new narrative based on very propagandistic behaviors and endeavors, I would say. And so, that's basically what we've been trying to document with Reset, and how we think that putting artistic freedom on the forefront of our policy work is important, because if we don't speak about this, this kind of roadmap that I described are very much easily put in place. And so, that's what we're trying to do ourselves. That's what we're trying to do with Culture Action Europe and with all European and national and local partners. Because the more you talk about it, the more it can exist. And that's why also campaigns such as Pay Trust from Culture Action Europe are more than important, because it's just occupying the digital and the narrative space. Because, I mean, in the end, it is very much a fight of narratives. And we can see it in political institution as well. The 2024 European Parliament, which has seen the far-right groups taken more and more and more space, they're just fighting for a narrative. They're just coming in the parliament, making a TikTok video and just living, but the TikTok video sees millions of views, and the debate of the parliament, no one watches, so it is kind of sad. But these kind of documents allow us as cultural players to really set things in the stone and try to move on and try to make this very depressing landscape that I described, I'm sorry, a bit more sunny, let's hope. At least that's what we're trying to. So that's it for me. I will leave the floor after me, I think, to Rosa, who will tell more about research and everything, which is be more grounded, maybe. Thank you.
Absolutely. I will hand over to Rosa in just a second. Thank you very, very much, Manon, and not least for setting up these 5 criteria that you have identified as the main criteria for that kind of playbook or roadmap to undermine artistic freedom, undermine freedom of speech, undermine the freedom of both basically articulation and creation, which is an interesting, I think those 5 are quite interesting. Also as a reflector in a way to the chapter in the cultural compass, because I think the cultural compass is already caught in between, what they would like to do and what they are practically able to do. And that dilemma, in a way, will keep a pressure on them, which is very much about what kind of democratic conversation do we like. And up here in the Nordics, and now I'm slowly getting into you can say that, well, arm's length and the societal design around the position of arts and culture in society is different to some extent than from many other Nordic or many other European countries. But at the same time, we do see these transitions take place. We do see these attempts to some extent control what we are talking about when we talk about arts and culture, when we talk about its role in society, its role in democracy. And one of the researchers that have been looking into that, and that also has an experience from being a politician and working in this field for quite many years, is our next speaker, our next guest. And that is you, Rosa Meriläinen, who's the Secretary General of Kulttuuri. Rosa has a background in political science from the University of Tampere. Rosa, you have been a member of the Finnish Parliament. You were on the list for the Green League back then, and recently you were also candidating for the European Parliament. So you have you both have the more active political position on this, and you have the researcher perspective on this. So please, Rosa, take it away. The screen is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Natalie and Manon. Well, I have to maybe I start with continuing from the last presentation, because those who are kind of attacking all the structures of freedom of speech, they think that in the European Union, we who are the guardians of liberal democracy and the rule of law and all the values of free arts and science and journalism and pluralism, that we have the power and we have made these rules and facts and values, and they want to change the whole sphere. They want to replace our ideas of facts and freedom and values and rules with theirs. And the basic reason why I wrote this pamphlet, the playbook for freedom of speech defenders, is that I noticed that, like Manon said and told, the methods of attacks are the same. And actually the people also, the social media influencers and the politicians who really do that, they are the same. But we all, within these structures of freedom of speech, we have our separate battles and separate debates, separate conversations. And that's the reason why we are so weak. That we can't see, we haven't been seeing really that when a young researcher of gender studies is attacked, or a director of a museum is changed, or a journalist of a public media company is kicked out from his or her job, it's the same battle. And if we could show solidarity and say that, well, we can see what's happening, we see what you are doing, and we can defend ourselves and our colleagues, show solidarity, we would be stronger. Because the hideous methods they are using is quite often to find a flaw, which is actually in there. And they can show that this journalist or this movie director or this this researcher or journalist, she's dirty, she's unprofessional, she's made mistakes, there's inefficiency in the institution, the money is not well spent there. So they can use maybe austerity or other kind of mistakes people are done. But the very attack is on the autonomy, and because if you don't have the proper working conditions, we all know that what freedom is that? Because we all need proper working conditions and the proper funding, proper financing in order to do our work. So the main claim in my pamphlet, in the playbook for defenders of freedom of speech, is that the independent science, the arts, the press, and civil society organizations together form the structures of freedom of speech. And they all are currently under threat throughout Europe, whether you have the right-wing populist party in the very government or not, like we have in Finland, or how big is the far right now in your country. This is something which is happening everywhere, and we all have the problem that when those attacks are always single, they seem singular. Well, there's this museum and there's this stupid exhibition. Am I really able to defend it? But well, yes, they have the right to create this kind of exhibition. And it's like I just participated in a international webinar on gender equality, and actually they have the same debate going on. That why is that so that those who are like this anti-gender, authoritarian, anti-liberal realm in the world, when they find something they agree on, they are all there at the same time attacking the same person or institution, and they are well financed. There are a lot of money in their work. And why is it so that they can do it together, but we who are supporting liberal democracy, we find it difficult to defend the colleagues and show solidarity if there's a minor flaw. If we disagree on something, we can't do it together. And so maybe my main message is that I urge the cooperation and collaboration with cultural field and those representing free and independent press, professional press, journalism, those who work for academic sphere, and also civil society movements, NGOs, which are attacked like many human rights movements and gender rights movements at this moment. So this is kind of like if you don't remember anything else from my speech, is that these all structures of freedom of speech, we have to do it together. And well, I also think that we have to be very honest with how fear affects us all. I can see from my colleagues, my friends in journalism, in universities, in different organizations. Many of my friends are in a leading position. That it's not easy to not to be afraid when this kind of this force of making you look dirty ready there all the time. If you ever criticize right wing, or you are too active on the with the woke agenda, that you can be removed. You can show you can lose your whole professional life. They can do it. They've done it for many, and they can actually do it. And there are also countries within Europe which are very polarized, and then the same methods are used also from the other side. But I really think that the polarization is also a problem. But we in cultural field have to be honest about the fear also, and understand that it's kind of it's affecting that people all of us are not able to keep on talking bravely because, well, they have families to support. But I've put the link to my pamphlet. It's in English. Well, I've written it in Finnish, but it's translated in English to the chat box. And it's made so that the idea is that you read it on your phone. So it's not a book like a book. It's a pamphlet you can read when you are participating in a boring meeting or sitting on a train. So you can read it from the phone. So my 10 like what I ask us all of us to do in the playbook for defenders of freedom of speech is, well, one, strengthen the financial basis of free speech structures. So we all also have to remember that we have to speak also for research, universities, public media companies, different structures of journalism, NGOs, that if we want them to defend us, we have to do it for them also. So strengthen the financial basis of free speech structures. Then, this is from Timothy Snyder, this my second point, increase the production and consumption of facts. This is a war on information also we are facing, and especially us with a neighbor like Russia know it very well. Then remember to defend both institutions and individuals who use free speech. Individuals have to defend institutions. Institutions has to defend individuals. We need institutions and those who really speak up. And do not ever polarize, even if others are stupid or wrong. And this is of course, for governments and for the European Union. It's in the Cultural Compass report and measure the state of freedom of speech. And at least I'm quite sure that the next time in Finland, when they do reports on the rule of law, the freedom of art is included. It hasn't been there before. Then remember to demand transparent processes and criteria for decision making, because then there's something to, for example, if they use financial cuts as a tool for attacking the structures of freedom of speech, the transparent processes and criteria helps. And then overall promote pro-education and pro-culture attitudes in Finland, in Europe, in your country. So it's kind of it's a bigger job than only like a promotion for culture. We have to see the whole sphere of learning and appreciating knowledge and facts important. And we all also have to learn concepts of we have to learn how to speak about artistic freedom, like Manon did. So when we are talking about and others are talking about freedom of speech, we know what it means in the cultural field. Then it's important to work through organizations and together with others. There are many people who try to kind of defend their freedom of speech alone. Well, that's we are weak. We are too weak alone. We have to always work through organizations. And then what also European Union has to do is to regulate social media. The algorithms, which are now like in favor of hate speech, hatred, anger, and loath, those algorithms must be changed. Love, truth, goodness, and humanism can't nourish within that kind of environment full of hatred and loath. And then at the end, show solidarity when your own interests are not directly threatened. That's the very essence of solidarity. And that's what we need right now when the whole concept of liberal democracy and rule of law is attacked. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Rosa. Thank you very much for this. Thank you very much for these 10 demands. I think they are a very visible way of thinking, actually, that infrastructure in which art, culture, artists live and work is a very well-educated precariat in all of our societies. So thank you very much for that. Which brings us to a represent from exactly that well-educated precariat of people that are sometimes invited in and sometimes doesn't have sufficient funding and has to struggle in a way and is part of another discourse, which is about artistic creation, which is about what we want to do, the narratives we want to create, the developments in our societies that we would like to reflect as artists. What does that mean? Who are we? And interestingly enough, we have with us an artist, Janne Schäfer, who is part of an artist duo, J&K, Janne Schäfer and Christine Egergaard, who has been working in collaboration for now 26 years. Maybe even a bit more, and are based in Møn, on the island of Møn in southern Denmark, has been working in and out of Berlin and Copenhagen over the years. And J&K have shown major solo presentations in a lot of different institutions, among others at the National Gallery in Copenhagen, Kunsten in Aalborg, the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, and so forth. And what's interesting for us, of course, is Janne's role here to be the artistic point of view in a way to the things that you have heard from the other presenters and your own reflections as a professional artist on freedom, on how freedom to create has been changed and how you experience it and view it. So Janne, please, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you everyone for these very informative and inspiring presentations. I am looking at it very much from the outside, being very thankful actually to realize that this kind of work is being done by you who sit in these official bodies. It makes me feel really happy to see that there's some people lobbying for this theme and for cultural work in general. I think it's, I will keep it quite short because I also will be leaving some time for other people in the audience to have some questions, but I have couple of things I really want to say as sort of comments on what I heard. So I find this, what Rosa is pointing out, that basically the point of solidarity is what is mainly requested or needed from all of us in the cultural sector right now, extremely important. And I think it's a difficult one because we're, as artists and as cultural workers, brought up from a neoliberal background, so to say, where we are by nature having been trained to be very competitive. And this is like a sort of core systemic problem, which is mainly for maybe more than the visual artists, more than anyone's been trained to be an ego worker and someone who has to sell themselves. So we are by nature trained and educated, very fear-driven. And this is something I've been trying to sort of work against in my sort of whole life as an artist somehow, because I'm working like fully non-commercial. I'm not selling my work in a gallery, and I'm only working in collaborations. I have never presented my own solo work. So mainly I work as a duo, which is not like a big collaboration, but still you have to negotiate yourself constantly. But I'm also working in some different collectives. over the years in and out of different groups. Because it's really like the problem that in the art world we are still mainly depending, and in the north it's a bit better than in the rest of Europe, but we're mainly depending on selling work commercially. So we're in this constant fight, which I'm not doing, but most artists internationally depend on selling work in like neoliberal capitalist structures, and working as an artist like I do, solely depending on public funding, is a huge privilege that is nearly only possible in the Nordic countries. It's like not possible in any other countries, and it is under big threat in the north too. And I'm from Germany, and I am only able to do this, what I've been doing, because I'm collaborating with a Danish artist since 26 years. And I would have never been able to do it without that, to be very honest, because I've been mainly living off Danish funding all of my life. I have, of course, had commissions and all sorts of supports elsewhere, but the main money comes from Northern Art funding, and where Norway and Denmark are quite outstanding. But this is still leaves you in a situation where you're completely precarious, even though with relatively, I mean, I'm not a sort of superstar at all, but I have 26 years of work behind me, and as like working in big institutions, teaching, having public commissions. I still have an economic situation that is like extremely precarious, even though, for example, I have a really big exhibition next year at Statens Museum for Kunst. This exhibition is so badly funded that, like, I mean, it's embarrassing to even say, and no one speaks out about these things. So it's just like, I think at the core of what I want to say is like, artistic funding is like at the basis of the problem. And I think it should be much more fairly distributed across Europe. It has to be, because there's so big differences within the European Union. And it would be so great if it would be more accessible for artists. It's extremely difficult to apply for anything EU that has whenever there's an EU stamp on it, it's just like, no, I'm not even gonna like look at the application, because it's just like so difficult. And it's impossible to access money if you don't have institutional backup. It's like you need a sort of, I don't know, you need like a 1 week course to even get going, and you will not get it. Or you have to have 50% of the funding already, or you have to finance 100% first. And if you haven't implemented wheelchair access, I mean, nothing against that or something, but then you will not be eligible, or you have to, I don't know, it's just so many like criteria that come with it that you cannot, it's an impossibility. So I just want to really lobby for making like funding the individual artists, and that's not just selfish, but I think because artists are so fear-driven, and because of the precarious situation that we stand in, so to just kind of give more money to the artists and to give more money to small institutions, to small project spaces, give them access to funding, it would just like do so much for the cultural sector, because we all know that the artists are in the end of the forerunners for all the other institutions. We are the one who go in to an area that no one wants to live in and do it, and then it becomes hip. I mean, it's just the small that we've seen all over Europe. We have to remember aesthetics are ethics in motion. We're the one who translate the values in the first moment to make them then later digestible for everyone else. So without us, it's not going to work. And we're the ones who's constantly doing the struggle, and we're doing the hard work for everyone else. And so I think it's just like free the artists from being bound up to the neoliberal system, give them money, like funding or whatever, what is it called, this Bürger, some monthly fee, whatever, I don't know the solution, but I think this is like the systemic problem that we have. And yeah, that's just my call here in this group. And I want to hand over the word so we have a few more minutes for other people.
Thank you very, thank you very, very much, Janne, and thank you also for underpinning that even in quite generous societal structures like the Norwegian or even the Danish, it is actually under pressure, and there is a structural underfunding even for big institutions in terms of quite many of the different projects that artists are allowed or invited into to contribute to. I think that's a very interesting and also quite important note that there is a new public, this is one of the areas where new public management actually can be seen in our sector, is about the financial logic and how instead of having a long-term perspective on how we work with artists, every exhibition is a project of its own kind, built into a kind of project logic that undermines the opportunities to think beyond or think behind or think deeper and to fund it, to fund the involvement of the artist properly so that it allows for that extension of scope where you can navigate as an artist. So thank you very much. We already have some comments actually in out there. Alex, I would you've been commenting in what country do artists live of art, for instance, and you also said the concept that some sort of market competition presents a viable solution to our economic precarity as individual artists. And now as individual artists is one of the most pervasive mythologies in all Western countries. Would you like to evolve a bit on that? I think that's a very interesting comment.
Yes, I'm happy to talk about that more. I think actually, as much as anything to do with censorship, with the funding cuts, the logic of the government is to say that actually artists are supposed to be earning money as entrepreneurs. If they're not earning money, the work's not profitable, so we shouldn't be supporting it from the taxpayers. That is actually, as much as they maybe don't agree with us, I think that might be more the reason they don't want to give us money, because they think what we're doing is a waste of time. Coming from New York, people don't live off of sales there for the most part. I mean, the situation in some ways is very similar, I would say, but with less grant money, and maybe actually more other types of jobs you can do. So here it's like the unemployment rate is going up and we're kind of trapped, I feel.
So when you say that, you're based in New York.
No, I live in Helsinki now.
You live in Helsinki now. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, yes, I live in Helsinki. I've been
Okay.
here for 5 years, but
Yeah.
as they cut the grant funding here, the artists are kind of stuck on unemployment a lot of the time.
Yeah. I think without going into that, because we don't have the time for that, but right now I think the only of the Nordic country where we don't see cuts yet is Denmark. But we expect them. Whenever I speak with people representing the arts, whether it's fine arts or actors, there is an expectation that they will come to some extent. But right now we don't see the cuts. What we don't see either, though, is a raise in artistic salaries. So in a way that there are no cuts, but there's no raise either, which is basically a cut, you could say, because living circumstances do develop over time, and most artists are kind of being paid salaries on quite low levels. So we do have a very underfunded precariat of artists. But I want to raise a question to our four panelists, which is when you look at it. When you look at it right now, and if you were about also thinking back that we do have a time limit for this discussion, what do you see as the most important dilemma for the European Commission to deal with if they turn the cultural compass into real politics? Natalie, Manon, Rosa.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Maybe I will kickstart some of the thoughts around it. again, it's very ambitious and it's big and it's very political, which is very welcome because we need that. We need that voice. We need the elevation also on talking about culture that is not something as only entrepreneurial, industrial, but it's something which is a public good. And needs to be supported as such. And everyone who is creating this good, all the people behind, all the artists, all the cultural workers, needs to be, as we are calling, asked, needs to be paid, and needs to be trusted. And I think none of those three calls are being implemented. If the compass will manage to bring those calls into action and not make it only live on the paper, then I think we have really reached something that is tangible and that we can be able to see some progress into implementing what needs to be implemented. For that, it means that there should be alignment within the different departments of the Commission within different DGs. There should be support from European Parliament, and there should be, of course, first and foremost, support coming from the member states in terms of both politically embracing those goals and, even more importantly, investing finances into strengthening the common European cultural sphere. So it's a long work, and it's a heavy one, and it's very ambitious one. So we are curious how that will all develop.
Mm. So am I, can I say? I like ambition, but in this sense, of course, that ambition can also, in a way, kind of there's a risk that it might get, well, it might vanish into thin air or even get lost in translation somehow. Manon, you also want to comment this? Or Rosa, please, whatever.
Please.
I pick the challenge of freedom of artistic expression and the autonomy of cultural institutions because this is quite a new situation that the cultural compass is so deeply rooted in the concept of democracy, liberal democracy, and the rule of law. So what we can do also, and we have to do in the cultural sector, to learn the whole rule of law concept. It's easier to be part of something you really know and recognize what does it mean, and also to learn what freedom of artistic freedom and the autonomy of cultural institutions, what does it mean, and to be also solidar and we have to also understand ourselves that it also needs action from our side. So, because of course the cultural compass can be there only if the cultural sector does it. It can't be only made by politicians and governments. We have to make it.
So there is an issue about multi-voicedness in a way. There is something about adapting into that rule of law, into that outer framework of what that really is, which is also under pressure, of course, that some people would like to alter the laws or change the laws and change the legislative logic inspired by somebody on the other side of the pond. But
yeah, thank you so much, Niels, for translating my point. Thank you so much.
Maybe just to just bounce back on what Rosa just said, but I do feel like this compass thing was extremely expected, and it is some kind of an unprecedented and kind of unique document, because we never had something that is so complex and thorough. But on the other hand, like, it does kind of satisfy everyone, but no one is truly happy with it because it opens so many doors, but it's like all the rooms that it opens to are blank, which is both a bit sad and a real opportunity. And to make the link with what Rosa was saying, it is this opportunity that we as cultural players from more an advocacy background or as artists, etc., where we need to come into the rooms and say, okay, I'd like this paint and this furniture, and I'll hang a little painting over there, you know, and make it a bit more furnished. And I do feel like there is an opportunity here for us to make it even more complex, but in a positive way, in the sense that it really fits our needs and our expectation. Yeah.
I think it's we're running out of time, unfortunately, because it's a discussion that needs real time in the sense that we can really sit together and reflect together. Because one of the things that always, ever since the massacre on Utøya in Norway, a thing has resonated with me in the aftermath of the massacre. The then Prime Minister of Norway said that, in his view, what characterizes the open, transparent, liberal democracy is basically the ability to agree to disagree, and to in a way embrace disagreement by embracing difference and allowing that to be a key denominator in how we navigate our own structures and how we allow people to be part of our society and take place in our society. And the reason why I bring it up is because we have a comment in the chat from Valentina Bravo, who is a non-EU artist living in Finland. And she says, well, for quite many, this conversation about artistic freedom has another dimension to it, because as a non-EU citizen, it's even more difficult to get an opportunity to even express your artistic works, because the cuts, the funding structures, the hierarchies, the way that we acknowledge people with other backgrounds and other kinds of educations from other kinds of systems, other systematic, is part of who we are. And there's quite many artists from non-EU countries working in our union or in Europe. They have additional jobs, working as bartenders or cleaners or housing assistants, because they have to make a living. And I think this is kind of an interesting part of the debate. And now I know that you have to run, Rosa. You're a busy person. So I will just open for that, give you the opportunity to go away and then take another 5 minutes to wrap it up. Thank you very much for being with us, Rosa. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. And to the rest of us who are here, I will just open just for the comment you had, Jan, that it's a mythology. Do you want to evolve a bit on that?
It was just a comment back to Alex that I didn't mean to say the people in the North live on funding and the rest sell their work. It's not how it is, but I just say in the North there's a little more awareness that public funding is like really essential. And in the rest of Europe, the system pretends that artists are selling. It's not like they're living. I mean, there are of course some artists that sell, but it's like a very small percentage. But the system pretends artists should live from sale, and that's how people are trained in their artist ego, that they have to be entrepreneurs and that they have to act like that. But the reality that people facing on the others, once they are living in life as an artist, is not like that. It's not working. But that's just what I wanted to elaborate on, that we are, just like still in a way catching up with a sort of mythology that is like, 100 years old, like this kind of modernistic sort of idea that you're producing these great products and you sell them on some market. And I would just like that to change. That I think there is also a lot has been changed in that direction, but it's still hanging in there, that like art is not seen as a real cultural value as such, that the actual doing of the work is good enough, or is like not even just good enough, it's like super essential for the whole culture, and it is a value in itself. You don't have to sell it in order for it to become a value. That's just sort of the point.
I'm very sorry.
And
I
no,
do need to go myself.
exactly. So I would just,
But I don't want to interrupt this
no, you
discussion.
don't worry. We will wrap it up because
I
we only
think-
asked for your attention for 1.5 hours. Thank you very much for joining us, Moula and Manon. Very, very lovely to have you with us. I know you have to run. Thank you very much, Natalie, for giving us the backdrop of the actions. And thank you very much for being our artistic point of view and reflecting with us, Janne. And thank you, Burak, for setting it all up. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. We will have a next kind of reflection on the cultural compass and what's going on the 14th of January. We hope to see many of you there. So from this point of view, we will just say thank you very much for participating and joining with us. Also will be part of the January conversation as well, and we will have a whole series of other guests. So from me to all of you, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. Lovely, lovely to see you. Wish we had more time.
Yeah. Thank you, Niels. Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.